Hello, welcome to a DIY guide on creating your own website. I hope you're feeling fresh this morning. I'm not, so I've had 3 coffees so far, and I'm definitely business on top. I'm wearing my sort of cozy slippers below, so you might be the same as well. So feel free to switch your video on or off and chill out and enjoy this lovely morning session. So we hope that it's useful for you, but also if you have any questions, like Esther said, just put it into the chat and we'll answer your question at the end as well. So I'm Karishma. You can find me at Karishma's World, and my email is also hello@karishmasworld.com if you have any questions afterwards as well. I'm a multidisciplinary designer, so I work across lots of different types of design. I'm a creative entrepreneur, and I've been working on lots of self-led projects as well over the last several years. I'm a design facilitator, so I take workshops on lots of different things, including design thinking. I'm a podcaster and a podcast reviewer, and I'm also a micro business owner. So all of this today is coming from the perspective of a designer and also as a small business owner. So it might be slightly different actually to some of the other website talks or web building talks you might have attended before, but hopefully it's very practical, useful, and lets you maybe even get started on something today potentially as well. So hopefully it's useful. So just to give you a bit of context as to some of the things that I have worked on in the past, they've all been very much led by Squarespace. Some of the projects have been women folk. There's the pop-up design museum that we set up through Belfast Design Week, and also Small Town Big Dreams, which is our podcast as well. So all of the sites and all of the content for that as well, I have developed and worked on with collaborators as well. And also my own ones here as well. I think that's got copied over twice. So I am karishmasworld.com. So I've done my own site and also a tiny history as well. So that's one of the projects, one of many projects that I've worked on. And also more recently, a site called weshouldpause.com. And that is just a site that is to do with going into botanic gardens and getting lots of overlays over your own pictures. So it's an interactive project that we set up, and this is the website for it as well. So that just gives you a little bit of context about some of the projects I've worked on. But the first question I'm going to ask is, do you need a website? And it seems a little bit counter to the whole point of this talk. But do you need a website? Because maybe you don't necessarily need a website. So there's a lot of sites that help you build a profile and sell things and have a portfolio. So just to go through a few of them initially, there's Etsy, which is brilliant for crafters. So if you're a maker or a crafter, this is a great site to get started on. You can find it here on etsy.com. And there's lots of different categories, and you can go into them and just delve into lots of different makers from all over the world as well. So Etsy is one option for crafters. This is an example of a person called Vegan Bunny Co. They make soy candles, and this is how they're selling their products online. So something like this can be good because there are existing customers going online looking for products. So if you have something like a craft product, this is easy to set up. And also they take a commission rather than it all being upfront payment as well. So that can be quite useful as well. Another site is also Big Cartel. So Big Cartel has some payment, but it can also let you sell for free at the very start. And that's quite useful as well if you have a small business, you have maybe a few products you want to test out in the market, and you can go in and set it up for free as well. So that's another good one to get you started if that's the case. And this is an example of a site that's set up on Big Cartel as well. So you can see it's very simple, very clean. This is probably one of the paid options, which is why they have a few more products and categories, but it could be a simple one with 5 products if you want to start as well. There's also Bandcamp. So if you're a musician, if you're working with audio, Bandcamp can be really great to get your work out there. And recently I was talking to a musician who said their Bandcamp Fridays have been a real boost to the whole industry because they don't take any commission on that day, and musicians can make the most money out of that they can possibly make. So this is how Bandcamp looks when you land on Bandcamp. You can discover music and you can go into lots of different categories and information as well. And then this is an individual sort of profile within Bandcamp. So this is a band called Big Joni, for example. And you can sell things like merchandise, you can build your community and also sell music as well. There's also Dribble, and you'll find lots and lots of portfolio sites available out there as well. And Dribble is great for digital designers, UX designers to get your work out there as well. And it also connects you with different jobs, clients, etc. as well. So it can be quite useful looking at that side of things as well. And this is one of the profiles that's on Dribble. It's a company called Muti. And again, it's just very simple, putting your profile and your portfolio out there just for people to access and potentially hire for products as well. So these sites can be useful because they're out there already, they're existing, they're usually free or cheap to run, and people can go on there and see your work already. And these are some more examples as well. So you'll find that there are tons of examples out there. So this is just a selection of them. So SoundCloud, a lot of podcasters would use. Folksy is a bit like Etsy as well. Behance is another great portfolio site. You said Bandcamp there. There's Cargo Collective. There is The Dots, which is another good connection site for clients. Coroflot is similar as well. And then Depop you might have accessed for fashion as well. So there's a big range of sites there that you can potentially go to. But then after all of this, if you still think you need a website, this is a DIY guide on creating your own website. Because realistically, when you go out there, you do expect brands to have a good website, to have a good web presence. So if you feel that these sites maybe don't complete what you need for your brand or business, then you should definitely have a website of some kind. But first, we're just going to start off with looking at what you like in a website. So this exercise is just called Your Vote Counts. And Esther had mentioned there's a chat below as well. So for this exercise, if you're going to be using the chat for your answers, that would be fab. And what it's going to be is a battle of different websites, just to quickly get your gauge on what you like in a website. And what I'd like you to do is tell me the name of the website that you like, and also one word about why you like it as well. So the first one coming up is Just Eat versus Deliveroo. So they're both obviously websites where you go to order food. So they have a similar purpose, but they're slightly different in design and making. And just to keep it simple, I've just taken the homepage. Obviously, websites are much more complex than that, and they have many more categories. But all I want you to do is have a look at these two and then pick your favorite with one word as to why. So this is the Just Eat homepage, just to give you a bit of a look there. And then this is the Deliveroo homepage. So just to show you again, this is Just Eat. And this is Deliveroo. So two local delivery services for food. So if you want to vote now for which one you like the best and just one reason why, and Esther, if you don't mind just seeing in the chat if there are any interesting answers, if you want to vote now for your favorite.
Yeah, so we've got a few for Just Eat: uncluttered, imagery, directive, Just Eat more simple, Delivery color palette illustration, Delivery better design, Just Eat direct, Delivery colorway, Just Eat photos, Delivery illustration, Delivery color, Just Eat photos of food, Delivery layout of color, Just Eat photograph of food, Delivery better design, Just Eat the name is clear for what it is and you get an example of what you get, Just Eat symmetry, Just Eat more restaurants, Delivery color, Delivery design, Just Eat relevant photography, and there's 21 more messages.
That gives us a great idea. Thanks so much.
Yeah, fab.
Yeah, that's great to find out what you like about these two websites, and you'll find out why I'm asking you all this at the end of the three battles. So this is the next one. So these are two really posh magazines, but really interesting, especially for design and creatives as well. So this is Kinfolk versus Monocle. So this is the first one. It's Kinfolk. So this is their homepage here, just to give you a bit of a look. And the second one is Monocle. You may or may not have seen these before. So the first one is Kinfolk, and the second one is Monocle. So again, if you just do the same, and if you just say the one that you like more and why you like it.
Okay. So,
if you don't mind again.
Kinfolk, simpler, minimal, simple, modern, cleaner graphics, simplicity, Kinfolk streamlined, Kinfolk uncluttered, minimal design. I find it a bit too bare. It's simple, cleaner, classic. simpler design, clean. Monocle, more ways to engage with the content. Monocle represented in the image. Kinfolk modern and clean. Kinfolk minimal, less writing, simpler. Don't really like either one, a little too much, a little too little. Monocle, a better browse line. Kinfolk, clean and simple. Kinfolk, easy to read.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Esther. And then the last one is the ASOS marketplace versus Depop. So both marketplaces for smaller sort of fashion brands and people that are trying to repurpose and restyle vintage as well. So this is ASOS marketplace. So just to give you a bit of a look here. And then this is Depop as well. So you may or may not have used or heard of these before. So just to show you again, there is ASOS Marketplace and there is Depop. So again, if you just say the one that you like more and a reason why you like it. And Esther, if you don't mind again.
Yeah, ASOS photography style, ASOS prefer natural colors, ASOS simpler navigation, ASOS I use the site, ASOS menu, ASOS easier navigation, ASOS navigation at top, better menu layout, great products, Depop better clothes and examples and modern, Depop better colors, ASOS clear and simple, the headings and navigation, white typeface, navigation. I like both. I think they're similar. Let's see.
Yeah, I find that too. Actually, interesting. They were quite similar.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Esther. So thanks for all of that, everyone. And just the reason for this whole exercise is finding out how you prefer websites and delving into your preferences. And then asking the whys finds out why you like certain things about a website. So these are just some examples of websites that I have picked, but they could be any sites that you particularly like or go to as well. And some example positives, like the ones you've given there: ease of use, design-led, adaptable and reviewed. Example negatives: hard to read, too much info, low res and mixed messaging as well. These sorts of positives and negatives can be quite useful because then you can start to use them in your own website as well. So these examples of positives, things that you've liked about all these other sites, you can start to implement these into your site as well and try and avoid some of the other ones as well. So it's just a really simple exercise to find out what you like about a website so you can implement it into your own as well. So form and function. So what is the function of your website? So it's primarily about who your user is, what your offering is, and how you can engage the user to interact with you, your product, your service, or offering. So these are the three primary things you're trying to do with your website. It could be more than this, of course, but these are the sort of core values of why you're setting up a website. And the big question is, what would you like your users to do? So you're obviously here today because you're maybe setting up a website for yourself or somebody else. So it's thinking more about what you'd like your users to do. So if you want to make a couple of notes as to what you'd like your users to do, just for yourself. Some examples of things you might want your users to do is things like purchase your products. So maybe it is that you're setting up a retail or e-commerce store. Maybe gain a following of some kind. Maybe you're trying to build a profile as a personality or as a writer or something else. Or maybe even hire you as a freelancer to work on different client projects as well. So these are just some examples as to what you might want people to do. So just to give you some examples of some other websites and their functions. So this is Radiotopia. It's a site for lots of different podcasts. So it's almost like a podcast house, and this is their website. So it's working on lots of different projects. So it's really important that it's really clear and clean, even though each of those projects are quite different from each other. And actually, I identify with this one quite a lot because I'm a multidisciplinary designer. So it's just trying to make each of the projects that I do really, really clear. So this is one about listening. Then this is a local example, Maven, and disclaimer, I know the ladies that run Maven. So they have just actually created this beautiful store and it's gone online. So again, this is an example of e-commerce or retail, again, keeping it clean and simple and tying it into their brand as well. This is one that wants you to subscribe. So the moment you land, it's asking you to subscribe. And it's a site called Neon Moire, which is all about events as well and big conferences for design. But at the center of all of this, as with anything else with branding or making a product, is the user, and the user is incredibly important. So examples of who your user might be, it could be shoppers from Lisburn, it could be emerging creatives wanting to network, or it could be people wanting to learn how to cook. So these are just some examples, but yours will obviously be personal to you. But it's important to be as specific as you can so you can reach the right users with your website. So for example, the Lisburn idea there, it could be grocery shoppers from Lisburn, emerging graphic designers wanting to network because they might have something quite particular to their field, or busy parents wanting to learn how to cook. So that might change how you're actually educating or creating content for them as well. Something that helps whenever you're doing this is creating an empathy map. And this is the empathy map in its simplest form. And it's all about the user in the center and finding out how they say things, how they think, how they feel, and how they do. So essentially, it's putting yourself in the user's shoes. And it seems like common sense, and really it is common sense. So some places you can get empathy maps online are Miro, Concept Board, Envision, and Mural. And you just have to go onto these websites and you'll get a lot of empathy maps and other content actually for customer journeys as well for free. So it's very useful to go and explore what they have to offer as well. So empathy maps are a great starting point to understand your user a bit better. But just another point then for you to note, who are your key users then and what are they looking for? So if you just make a couple of notes as to what you think they might be looking for from your website as well. Section then is about domains. So this is just going through all of the practical elements. You've probably heard of domains before, but just in case you haven't, some examples are karishmasworld.com, that's my website, smalltownbigdreams.co.uk, womenfolk.co. And you might have been confused in the past as to what's in the name. You may or may not know about this, but just in case you don't, I'll just go for it very quickly. So .com is the sort of international domain end that you have across lots of different websites. It just makes it a bit more global. So if you're looking for your brand to be more of a global brand, this is a really good pick for you. .co.uk is specific to the UK, but you get other ones for other countries as well. So if you're creating something specific to a country or region, this can be quite useful. And sometimes .co.uk can be cheaper as well, depending on what domain you're looking for as well. Then .org can be useful if you're setting up a nonprofit or organization or charity. But these are just 3 examples of endings. You can get lots of different ones. You can get things like .club or .io, lots of different ones. So you can look into those as well. So how do you get a domain name? So there's a couple of options. One of the options is to purchase a subscription for the domain name, and that's through a site, just a specific domain site. Or what you can do is purchase a hosting package which includes a domain name, because what you'll find is a lot of hosts now include a domain within their offering because it's a tempting thing that you get a domain for free whenever you sign up as well. So it's worth looking into that as well. So some examples of places that just retail domain names are GoDaddy, which is the really famous big one, which I've used quite a lot in the past. There's 123reg. And locally, there's Big Wet Fish as well. So they provide a whole range of options, including web hosting as well, but they also retail domains as well. So they're based in Carrickfergus. So once you've got your domain, what you might be looking to do is host and build your website. So this particular talk is catered towards those that might not necessarily have a coding background, but you can choose whether you're coding or non-coding, or you want something that's a bit more visually based. So things like Squarespace, for example, you don't need much coding at all. So you can just go in and completely visually design something. You might want to look at different types of pricing models as well. So subscription-based is basically the type of model across all of these web hosting sites. So you'll find that you can either pay annually or pay monthly for these sites. But the other important thing to consider is it just going to be yourself that's controlling the site? Or do you want a number of users? Do you have other people in your company, or do you have anyone else supporting you? And do you want to create some level of control that maybe you're the main admin, but you have other people contributing and editing to it as well? So that's another thing to consider, which comes into the pricing and which one you're going for as well. So these are some different examples of places you can go for web hosting and domains as well, potentially as well. So Squarespace is the really famous one that you've all probably heard of. There are some other options there. There is Webflow. There is Format. So Format's another one that's another portfolio style site as well. There's WordPress, where you can actually involve a bit more coding too. There is Weebly and Wix, and they're also quite similar. And Wix has actually really upped its game in the last few years, because there used to be a massive difference between it and Squarespace, but now actually it's pretty good as well. And actually, Shopify can be pretty great for anyone that's looking into e-commerce as well. So it gets right into the core of selling online as well. So that can be a useful site to look at too. But I'm just going to quickly take you through a few elements of Squarespace just to give you some of the basics. Yeah. So obviously this workshop is more general. It's about generally setting up a website yourself and getting it started. So this is just a little quick tour through Squarespace. So what you might find initially whenever you're setting up Squarespace is they ask you for what type of website you're setting up. So it could be something like an online store or a portfolio, and maybe in certain areas as well, like food or restaurants, for example, as well, because then they might suggest something that involves menus and specific things that are useful to you as well. And what they'll try and do is match some templates that you might find interesting. And usually they match them quite well, but you might find that actually, you might want something that's a bit more portfolio based, even though you're a food business. So you can actually go across all of these and explore them a bit further as well. So whenever you first go into Squarespace, what you'll find is a huge menu of different things. And I'm not going to go into all of this just because then it'll be another whole talk on Squarespace. But just to give you some of the key sort of features within Squarespace, what it lets you do is adjust things like styles, and it does it very visually. So it has things like the site background color, the width, spacing, font sizes, etc. And it lets you go into that in styles. It also has a pages navigation as well, and it lets you set up different kinds of pages. So it could be just a regular page. It could be something like a gallery page, for example. So it lets you set up different things in that section as well. And Squarespace is actually connected to e-commerce, so it can be quite useful if you're looking to retail your products as well. So you'll see as well, there's a main navigation, a secondary navigation, and not linked. And all that means is that the main navigation is your main headers that go across the top. Secondary navigation is the sort of drop down from that. So it's the sort of next in line. So you've got your main headers, the next in line, and then not linked doesn't show up in your main menu on the page. But it could be that you want some click through to a different page. So it could be that you land on the design page, for example, and you're reading all about it, and then you want to take people to a particular product. And then having an unlinked page lets you actually connect it to a page on your site, but it doesn't appear immediately whenever you go onto that home page as well. And it's very easy to edit things on Squarespace. So it has these little sections with pluses where you can add in things like images and galleries. You can add in things like social media icons, as well as the most important thing, which is the actual content and visuals as well. So it's very, very easy to navigate and add things. So these are just some examples of things that you can add in. You can add things like call to action, like buttons, which take you to other places or to documents. You can add audio. You can embed different videos into it as well. So it's quite a straightforward, easy to visualize type of site. And you'll find the same with Wix as well. It's quite similar in how it functions as well. But the most important thing about all of this is content, and content is king. So before you even set up a website, it's really important to start gathering content. So things you might require are written content. So that's general information about your business, about yourself, perhaps, if that's important for your business. Things like blogs and articles, categories. So that could be things like your header. Contact details. So for example, if you want people to get in touch with you, how do they do that? If you're a restaurant, you might want a menu, or even if you have some sort of delivery service. And then also looking at things like tags. How do you want people to find you? So for example, hashtag Saturday, hashtag coffee, if you're doing things on the regular on particular days, or if you have particular types of products, it's important to consider what type of things you want to tag on all of your pages as well. Then you'll want to consider visuals as well. And again, these are all straightforward, common sense things, but it's just to give you almost a checklist so that you have these things ready whenever you go to set up your website. So things like graphics, so this could be your branding and logo, but also any other types of graphics like infographics as well. Photographs, so good quality photography is really key, but it's important to save images at a size that doesn't completely crash your website. So having good quality photographs, but that are a lower file size. Then videography as well. So what you'll find with sites like Squarespace and Wix is that they ask you to actually embed your video from another site. So they ask you to share the URL of YouTube or Vimeo or one of the other sites where you can actually upload the video itself. And that just means that it's not being stored directly on the website, and it just makes it a little bit easier to navigate as well. You can also add in things like animation and GIFs. You can also add in maps. So maps might be very useful if you're, looking for people to come to a brick and mortar business, for example, or to a restaurant, that kind of thing. And you can also embed lots of different things, as I mentioned, the YouTube videos, but also things like audio files. So, if you're on SoundCloud, you're a podcast, you might want to embed your individual episodes into a website as well. Then you have to consider what your call to action is. So what do you want people to actually do whenever they land on your website? Do you want them to subscribe to your newsletter? Do you want them to read what you have to say? Do you want them to listen, to follow you, to contact, or to purchase or shop from you as well? So just to consider what your call to action is and have that really clear on your website. The useful thing at the moment with websites and with everything being online, or so much of everything being online, is that you can actually track who's interested in your product and where they're coming from. So things like analytics can be incredibly useful. So within Squarespace and some of the other sites, they have their own analytics that let you look at things like geography, who's visiting, how many visits you have per month, per year, per day. Where they're coming from is quite interesting as well, which is the referrals. So, for example, it could be that you put something out on Twitter and suddenly from that, loads of people went to your website, and then you know that that's the way to reach people, and then you can keep doing that again. Then popular content as well. So you might think you've done the best blog ever, but actually no one's really gone to it, or it's not had as many hits as something else that you've shared that's had much more traction. So it's interesting to see what the popular content is. For Design Week, for some reason, we have maps, people searching for maps to land on our website quite often. So it's interesting to navigate those as well. So you can have analytics within your hosting, like Squarespace, but you can also embed it as well with things like Google Analytics as well. So you can have a separate analytics platform, or you can have it within your website as well. But it's important to prep content so it's ready for your website as well. And it's important to prep it in a separate space. And this can be particularly good in terms of writing. So if you're writing content for a website, it's important to keep it somewhere else as well. So Google Docs or Microsoft Word or anything else, and have a folder of images as well, or visuals or anything else. And the writing part of it's really important because it's easier for you to check things like typos and grammar if it's within a site, or within software that allows you to do that as well. So within something like Google Docs or Microsoft Word, it actually lets you check things like spelling errors, whereas it might not let you do that within the website as well. So it's easier to do it offline and then bring it online afterwards. Then it's important to save content for web to ensure that it loads really quickly. So things like images, you want to make sure that they're saved for web, so they're not really huge files as well. And usually whenever you open them up in other software, there is an option to save for web, and it gives you lots of different sizing options as well. For e-commerce and retail, what's incredibly important, and I think Emma will talk you through this a bit more in her presentation, is just having a really strong database and an idea of what your stock is as well. So having something as simple as Excel and numbers behind the scene and then bringing it into your website can be quite useful, just to keep a track of exactly what you have in stock as well. So it's all relatively straightforward, common sense things, but it's just having that checklist of things to go through and get yourself started. It's also really important to remember that people access your website on different devices. So what you'll find is that maybe you're designing something that looks beautiful on a laptop, but actually all of your customers are actually accessing your website on a smartphone. So then it's really important to look back at the user and consider where they're maybe seeing your website. So if you're mainly trying to access an audience that's on the go, that's traveling all the time, it might be that you're trying to reach them on a smartphone. So it's considering how you can make things simple to read. If you can have a simpler menu, for example, if you can have font that's large enough to read clearly on a smartphone because it's got a smaller interface there as well. So it's just having a think about what devices they might be accessing your website on. And you don't want it to be simply for a smartphone. You want it to also transition well into a laptop or any other sort of device as well. But it's important to focus on the primary type of device. The cost is incredibly important whenever you're considering how to set up a website. And there are many costs that come into play. So one of the main costs is, well, two of the main costs are the domain hosting cost and the web hosting cost as well. And you'll find typically this is subscription based and it's annual or monthly. Then also the cost of making content. And this is something that people might not consider, but things like design software, equipment, how you're actually making that content, whether it's photography, videography, anything else like that. Then also external support. So this is all about actually setting up your own website, but it could be that you need to create something a bit more specialist, in which case you might need to consider hiring a web designer for some specific elements, or hiring an SEO specialist to really help you rise to the top of the ranks on search engines as well. So it's considering all of those things whenever you're setting up a website, and these are just some of the main costs involved. So this is an example of how to set up a domain using GoDaddy. So again, what you'll maybe type is, I've just typed in I'm not a cat since there's a trending meme, slightly cheesy, but I couldn't think of anything else to put in there. And that just gives you an idea of all the different sort of endings that come up. So you've seen .co.uk, you've seen .com, but there'll be lots of others as well. And it'll tell you for how long you can get a contract or subscription and how much that costs as well. So it's important to have a look into that to see what's affordable and what you'd like in that aspect too. And this is an example from Squarespace as well. And you'll find this across all of the other web hosting sites as well, that they have a tiered type of plan, which means that you can have your basic, very personal plan. You can have something that's a step up, that's more of a business plan. Or you can have a really sort of, all singing, all dancing type of plan, which is more of a commerce or professional plan as well. So it's worth having a look at what you actually need for your website. And it's important to remember that it's a recurring cost. So it's not usually a one-off thing. It usually comes around the same time each year. So it's trying to find something that's really affordable for yourself as well. Then a few key points about SEO. So SEO is search engine optimization. And just to keep it really, really simple, so obviously we're not going into a whole workshop about SEO, so just to keep a few key points in here. SEO is about doing things like choosing the right URL. So for example, if I'm Karishma and I'm creating a fashion company, it could be adding both of those things into the name of the URL. This might not always be appropriate, so I haven't used that for my particular websites, but it could be right for yours if you're trying to rise to the top of the SEO rankings. It's creating things like titles and descriptions for each page, so everything is outlined very clearly. Utilizing anchor text, so you have some key text within all of your pages as well. Adding alt or alternative text to all of your images. So whenever search engines are looking at different websites, they might not actually see the image, but they'll see the description of the image. So adding things like alt text is quite important for that kind of thing. So the website recognizes that your image is about plants and Belfast and anything else, for example. And then you want to give your site structure with the right sort of headers as well. So it's just having really clear categories and having uniformity across it all as well. So these are all via Wix.com, and Wix.com has a lot of good resources about this as well. then you'll find that, a lot of people go onto Google as one of the main search engines. And Google has this EAT principle, which is expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And these are three key factors that help determine if a web page is going to have good quality content and helps pages rise to the top of the search engine as well. So it's really, really important, particularly if you have really important areas that you're working in as well, such as healthcare and finance, where trust is incredibly important. So this will help you rise to the top of the rankings as well. So hopefully this has given you an overview as to how you could maybe set up a website, given you a bit of food for thought. But if you forget everything else, do try and remember that what you're looking for in creating a website, or in fact a platform if a website isn't right for you, is something that is manageable, something that is affordable, and something that is up to date. Because I think a lot of people think that once you've set up a website, that's it. But there are recurring costs, and also it's important to keep everything updated as well. And something that's manageable that you can edit yourself. I found that in the past, when you go to some investment people, they advise you to go to a massive web company and have an all singing, all dancing website. But that can end up becoming quite unaffordable and expensive. So if you are a small business and you want a bit more control over what you're doing, then something like Squarespace or something like a portfolio site might be more up your street. So hopefully that's given you an idea of how you could potentially go about setting up a website. And thank you very much.
I'm Emma, and I run two businesses. One is called Hunter Paper Co., which I started back in 2014, just after I graduated from uni. We sell luxury letterpress greetings cards and stationery, and I design it and print it all in-house in my studio here in Belfast. So I started selling at markets just after I graduated. I was trying to freelance as an illustrator. And so I thought like I would freelance, and alongside that I would just do markets as a way of like bringing in a little extra income. So I started selling the products that I'd made at uni, or like the pieces really, the prints and things like that. I sold them as art pieces. And then alongside that, I just started building a bit of a customer base and reacting to what they were wanting really at markets. So I started selling cards, because a lot of people were asking for smaller items. And then if you know my business now, cards has really overtaken everything, and that's the majority of my business. So yeah, that's kind of the beginnings of that. And I thought I would just take you through the progression of my two businesses and how I've brought customers into the ecosystem of those businesses, and then therefore the website as well. So it's really just about the marketing that brings them to the website, and then how they go from there then. So the second business is Hunt and Gather. I set that up during lockdown last year with my husband. And we had kind of had the idea of a shop for a long time, but it never really came to the fore of my focus. So we really want it to be kind of a cohesive brand, selling Hunter Paper Co. products, but also selling curated stationery from around the world. So we'll just move on here. So a little bit of my kind of early beginnings. Here's some embarrassing photos from market days back in the day. So when I started, I was definitely doing a lot of markets monthly, and I would gain customers from that. And like after markets, I would find that they would follow me on Instagram, and I would build up my following that way. I would also add little leaflets into their bags when they bought something. And that kind of incentivized them to move over to my website. At the same time, I also set myself up on notinthehighstreet.com and etsy.com. And the traffic from there would kind of naturally come over as they would search for my brand on Google, maybe to see if they could get a better price, or just to learn more about my brand really. So I was naturally gaining those customers from those platforms as well onto my own website. And then just organically on Instagram, I was sharing a lot about what I was doing at the time. I was doing a lot of paper cuts and lino prints, and I think I gained a lot of followers from people who were interested in that and just wanted to learn how to do that themselves, and also were just interested in the craft of it. So from there, then the markets kind of steadily built up, and I kind of reached a turning point where I was working all the time, basically, on making things that weren't really scalable. So I would take a long time to lino print cards, which is just not a sensible way to grow a business. But at the time, I was just growing, and I didn't really know much else. So I'd always been interested in letterpress, and decided at the time that I would just go all in. This is make or break, and I would buy myself a press, which was a huge investment at the time. So it's because of that huge investment, I decided that, this is my chance to really upscale my business, and I would apply for a trade show at the same time and start trying to sell to shops. So I bought the press in around May, June time of the year before the trade show, and booked a trade show for January. And in that time, I really focused on putting together a catalogue and putting together a cohesive collection to sell to trade, and really learning the ins and outs of attending trade shows and marketing to wholesale customers. So at that point, I was trying to shift my website more over to a more professional kind of like at the beginning, it felt really DIY, and it was really just like my Instagram feed, really. So at this stage, I was switching it all over to really present this brand as a professional business, really. So then I went to my first trade show in January 2017, I think. And from there, I learned a huge amount about marketing business to business. So it was a completely different type of customer from the retail customers I was meeting at markets and the retail customers that had been coming to my site beforehand. And so, I had to learn different release schedules. If you're a shop owner, you're going to want to be buying in your Christmas stuff anywhere from March, April onwards. And they usually cut that off around September time. And at the same time, I was learning a lot from peers, a lot of other standholders who were next to me. There's a lot of downtime at trade shows, so we just talked business pretty much constantly. And I learned a lot about how they run their businesses and how they market to different types of customers, like their own retail customers that are coming to their website, or to the business customers that we were really there for at the time. And then at the same time, I had a huge learning curve on the ins and outs of wholesale. So I had to learn a lot about shipping margins, how to work with those tight margins for wholesale, because you really have to cut things in half to serve a wholesale audience. So next up, I thought I would talk about the hunt and gather side of my business. I'll just go grab my notes here because I've shuffled on quite a bit. So over the years, I've been going to trade shows now twice a year for quite a few years, and I'd often bring my husband along with me, and in the downtime, one of us would go off for a walk and we'd see all these amazing brands that were at shows. This is Top Drawer in London in the photo. And we always kind of talked about wouldn't it be amazing if one day we had a shop that stocked Hunter Paper Co products and also, all these amazing brands that we were seeing. But it was always kind of like a dream. One day we'll do that. And then towards the end of 2019, start of 2020, I thought, okay, this is the year that I'm actually going to start working towards this. And I definitely thought it was going to be very small steps, do a little pop-up, maybe get a stand at St. George's Market, that sort of thing. And then COVID happened. So we all know what a spanner in the works that's thrown into things. So I kind of started over the Christmas period of 2019, branding and developing the social media for this brand and really setting it up as a new project. And then I had January and February, huge big time for trade shows usually. So I spent a lot of time at those shows just gathering catalogs and kind of thought, we'll get these trade shows over with. They're such a big time commitment. Then I'll focus on hunt and gather after that. And then I literally came home from a trade show and went into lockdown. So when that happened, we kind of just had to reassess everything, really focus on what was working for Hunter Paper Co. and just took a step back from that. But then realized that, this pandemic isn't going anywhere. So we're going to focus on just what we can do to grow different parts of the business and decided to go ahead and launch Hunt and Gather in May. So I am actually quite thankful in a way for lockdown. Obviously, this pandemic has been a huge burden on everybody and it's been horrendous for so many people. But alongside the negatives, it really gave me some good opportunities to look at my business as a whole, really decide what these two brands were and what they were going to be, establish them as two separate revenue streams, and also really work out a plan of how I would market to each of these two businesses, because they are very different. Marketing to wholesale is completely different to marketing to your own retail customers. So yeah, lockdown just gave me that chance to really, sit down and figure out a plan for these two businesses. So I thought I would just quickly break down how I kind of separate out the marketing for these two businesses and therefore then drive each particular customer to the sites. So for Hunter Paper Co, I've really started to hone in on the fact that that is just a business to business company. I sell my Hunter Paper Co products through Hunt and Gather, but I'm not directing retail customers to there, just people who want to buy a card or a notebook or something. So so for that business, I'm really just directing business customers to my site through trade shows. It's the biggest one, but obviously we can't do that at the moment. Postal marketing is a huge part of that, which is a really, I think when you think about starting a business now, you don't think that postal marketing is relevant anymore, but for that type of business customer, they need to see a catalogue, they need to see things in person and samples. And then as well as that, just email newsletters, just keeping them up to date with any new releases that we have. So then the other side of the business now, Hunt and Gather, has been a really nice opportunity for me to focus on different types of marketing that I never seen fitting into the Hunter Paper Co puzzle. So I have started using social media a lot more for that brand. I've started going on Instagram stories and talking to camera for the first time, which is terrifying, but it's been good. And it's been really nice to connect with customers. I think it's really built up a personal relationship with customers. People message me back and we talk about things. And I just don't think you would have that unless you were on video to people. So then as well as that, we also use pay-per-click ads through Facebook or Google. And that drives a lot of our traffic in. It's something that we're definitely still experimenting with, but it's interesting to kind of bring those customers into our ecosystem and then work on retargeting them into our Instagram and things like that, and really building that relationship from there. And then lastly, we also put little postcards into our orders, asking people to share their products, share it on Instagram, and just try and build up that customer relationship. And also hopefully they'll in turn refer their friends who are interested in stationery too. So now I thought I would just take you over and show you my actual sites and how each of them really function very differently. So we'll start off with Hunter Paper Co. And now that I've kind of worked through all of those all of those marketing areas and really established those two brands separately, I set up Hunter Paper Co. website just to be very, very simple. You click on the site and you're just directly taken to where you need to go. So I've kept the navigation really simple. Everyone who comes to the site is going to be a different type of customer. You're either going to be a business customer looking for wholesale, or we also do wedding stationery. So you could be a bride or groom looking for wedding stationery, or you'll be a retail customer looking to buy our products. So I just wanted everyone who comes to the site to find exactly where they needed to go. So yeah, it just has a really simple navigation at the top, just a little bit of imagery to explain who we are. And then I've broken it down into exactly where you need to go. And really, when I kind of took myself through each customer journey, and once they clicked on the site, how quickly could they get to where they needed to go? So I just wanted the first page to just have that space that, you land on the site, you know where you need to go, and then you click on from there. And then lastly, if you can't find where you need to go or you have any other questions, you can just chat to me. And yeah, just kept it as simple as that. There's a navigation at the bottom for someone, if they have FAQs or anything like that, or to find out a little bit more about me, they can do so there. So yeah, that's I set this site up on Squarespace. Just as Karishma said, it's so easy to just navigate the site yourself and just add a site really quickly. So I probably built this site in about 2 days, and I really feel like anyone who has any kind of background on the internet, if you've used Facebook, if you've uploaded photos to Instagram, I think you could probably get a pretty basic Squarespace site in place. So yeah, it's great for that sort of basic site that just needs to direct people where they need to go. So then I'll take you over to Hunt and Gather. This is our retail site, and I host it on Shopify. So you can host e-commerce on Squarespace, but it just doesn't give you the same capabilities as Shopify. And I actually started on Squarespace with the Hunt and Gather site, but just found that it was too clunky to kind of serve that big inventory that I now have. So we very quickly moved over to Hunt and Gather or to Shopify, and it's been great for just hosting e-commerce. It tracks your inventory, so when you're running low on products, you're not going to run out. And yeah, it is great for analytics and that sort of thing as well, and also adding in different apps like I have added in my email software and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's brilliant for e-commerce, but I definitely think you could start on Squarespace if you just want that minimum viable product. So in terms of the design and the reason we've gone for a lot of this, so just wanted to keep it as simple as we possibly could. We have a really big inventory now, especially of my own products and then other products that we bring in. So I really took a lot of time over the navigation trying to work out the best system that like any customer that landed on the site would see exactly where they needed to go in as few clicks as possible. So we drew out different ideas for this just on a piece of paper, and just worked out, if you were looking for a notebook, what would be the best way for you to click through to that, or scissors or whatever else. And then like gift guides and things like that, we just tried to keep it as simple as possible, but there is a lot there. And then from there, we decided that a slider that kind of moves across your screen, nobody really looks past the first one or two. So I built this masonry kind of layout, like a grid. And then from that, I think you can just really easily find where you want to go. So if you're looking for cards, it's straight there. Then below that, we just highlight what's really current at the moment. So at the moment, we're really pushing Mother's Day because it's coming up in March. So we've got a little selection there, and you can click through to a whole range of Mother's Day items. And then we like to keep new arrivals on the front page as well. It just constantly updates. We try and update that weekly, and then it shows customers that are coming back again and again that, we're constantly updating, we're constantly fresh, and really treating your front page of your website like your shop window. If you've seen a really nice shop that you loved, it would constantly be changing that window to try and entice you in, really. So just really trying to keep it customer focused, really thinking about how the customer navigates through the site, and where they would click first, how many clicks it would take them to get to where they need to be, and really trying to keep it as much like a shop window. I always keep that in my head as I go. So then I'll just flip back to presentation. And next up, I just thought I would just break down quickly from an e-commerce perspective, really, although I do use Squarespace not for e-commerce as well, what each of the two sites have in terms of positives and negatives. And I definitely don't prefer one over the other. I think they're both great for either purpose, but I think your business naturally selects which one works better for you. So Squarespace, the thing I love the most about it is the drag and drop design. You can literally pull things into place. If you want like this image to come to the top, you can do that so easily. It really is very user friendly. There's no coding involved. You can just jump straight into it. And and it's really, really affordable. I think, yeah, like Karishma had up on her screen, it was like £10 a month or something. So really, really affordable if you want to just get a basic website up there and edit it yourself as well. The downside for me was that eCommerce just didn't offer enough functionality, really. So it was, you could track inventory, but it was kind of difficult to do that easily. And Squarespace just offered us more of a kind of more of those statistics that we need to see on a daily basis when we have quite a large inventory, to make sure we're not selling products that have already sold out. And then the thing I don't like so much about Squarespace is there's a few apps that you can connect to it. I think it's getting better with that, but Shopify definitely has a lot of apps that you can add in that help make the running day to day a lot easier. And then lastly, Shopify, you've lots and lots of templates to choose from. A lot of them are free, but there are a lot of paid ones as well. I think this is a great opportunity to like lean on the expertise of a web designer without, hiring a web designer. So they've already done the template for you. You just have to apply it to your business and just tweak it from there. The analytics are great. There's a lot of information on abandoned cart checkouts, so you can try and retarget those customers and bring them back into the business. And it connects well to third-party apps like Google Ads. We're running through an app that we connect to our Shopify site, and I use Klaviyo as my email marketing software, and it connects really well to Shopify and helps you determine which customers are like your best customers, which customers haven't bought in a while that you might want to reach out to, that sort of thing. So there's lots of apps that kind of help your day-to-day running of the business. Some of the downsides, it can be more expensive. I think it's £38 a month. And then on top of that, once you add on apps, a lot of them have a recurring charge monthly too. Some of the design functions can be quite frustrating, especially if you come from a design background. So the blog is extremely basic and frustrates the life out of me. It's just so clunky and old-fashioned. And then I think at times, if you want to really get the most out of it, you kind of need to look into coding a little bit, although saying that everything is Googleable, and just keep looking for tutorials that'll help you. I look on YouTube constantly for different ideas. So yeah, that is really the end of my talk. And
Right. Thank you so much, Emma. That was fantastic and very informative. So I think what we'll do is just jump straight into the questions here. I'll maybe start with yours first, since you're currently there. So one person has asked, which theme do you use on Shopify? This looks very clear and easy to use. This is for Emma.
I think I use the grid theme. I would need to check that, but I think it's a paid theme that I think it cost me about £180. So seems like a big investment. I definitely would start on a free theme. But if you find that certain things aren't working within a free theme, £180 if you space that over. I've had it now for a year. And I'll continue to have it. I don't see any need to change it. I think it's a good investment to kind of add into your business.
Perfect. And then another question for Emma. Emma mentioned she moved from Squarespace to Shopify to sell products. Can you link your Shopify account to your Squarespace website?
I don't think you can link them directly, but you can download a CSV file of all of the products that you already have on Squarespace if you're switching over. And then it'll upload to Shopify and it'll have all of your products there. There's maybe a few tweaks that you might need to make once you load all those products on, but it's a lot faster to do it that way if you're switching.
Perfect. Are there specific apps for Shopify that you couldn't do without?
Definitely now the email marketing software I use at Klaviyo. I've only just switched over to it, but already I can see how many of the integrations will be really useful, like targeting certain customers that are our best customers or have maybe not ordered in a few months, or setting up a really targeted abandoned cart system, that sort of thing. I think it's really useful. As well as that, we run our Google Ads through the Shopify integration. So it takes our customer base and then uses Google's algorithm to target other customers that are like our current customers. So it's just a really smart way of running ads rather than us like guessing, really. So yeah, they would be the two. And then I think there's a good Instagram integration that works quite well. I think if you just integrate it yourself through a theme, it doesn't update all the time. So that's quite useful. And we've also been using, can't remember what the app's called, but it's like selecting similar products and adding them underneath the product page so that a customer will see more of what they might like. So yeah, those sorts of apps are really useful.
Beautiful. Did Emma take her own photos for her sites, use a professional photographer, or use stock images?
Most of the time we use a professional photographer for 100 Paper Co products. Very rarely I would kind of Photoshop some designs into, if there's a photo of a card being held by someone, I would maybe just try and Photoshop a new design in just to get that like product up there if I really want to launch quickly. But most of the time we hire a photographer because I just don't think I could do as good a job. And then for Hunt and Gather, a lot of the time we're using the stock photography that the suppliers have given us. Obviously the professional photographer from Hunter Paper Co. And yeah, very, very rarely we do the odd bit of photography ourselves, but mostly professionals.
Okay. What are the limitations of e-commerce on Squarespace? I would want to have a shop on my website that sells 5 to 10 products.
For 5 to 10 products, I think it would work really well. It's really just, we were struggling when, like, I have maybe 200 cards now. So, and then we've brought in lots of different brands. So when you have that huge inventory, trying to keep track of what's in stock and what's not was really, really hard. But with those 5 to 10 products, you should be able to see them all on the one page and just keep track of it. It should be doable on Squarespace, definitely.
If you're setting up a new business, would you recommend setting up an Etsy shop or not to see how things sell before investing in a website?
Yeah, definitely. I had my own website as well. The last month or so of my degree, that was our focus really, to get a portfolio website in place. So I had a website and then I just added on an e-commerce section to it. But I definitely would test on Etsy if you're very, very early stage and you just want to see if products will sell. That's kind of what I was doing with markets at the time. I was just seeing how customers would react to it. So Etsy or Not on High Street is a great way to test that in the beginning. And yeah, without that investment of a website.
That's a good point, Emma, actually, about testing it in markets. Obviously we can't really have markets at the moment, so maybe a good way is testing it online if you're starting out, but on something that is free or
absolutely. Yeah it's the same principle really, just online. So yeah
absolutely. And I'd say even for the previous question, something like Big Cartel that lets you sell up to 5 products for free.
Yeah Big Cartel was the first site I had actually, and it worked great for what I needed it for.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I will jump on to the questions for Karishma. Karishma, websites. Is there value in keeping your domain host and web host separate?
It just depends on the costing, really, because what you'll find is that some web hosts offer a year's free domain. So something like Squarespace sometimes gives you a year's free whenever you join, but then you have to look at what the cost is beyond that as well. So if that's all affordable to you, it makes sense to get that first year for free. Otherwise, you can get it on GoDaddy or one of the other domain sites as well.
Mm-hmm. And hold on a second. So someone says, hello, probably a bit of a basic question, but I was wondering how to get Squarespace out of my domain URL. As far as I know, I'm paying for a co.uk domain, but it still says Squarespace in the URL. Thank you.
Okay, so if you have bought a domain on a separate site, what you need to do is actually just point the domain servers to Squarespace. And the way to do that is there's actually a domain section within Squarespace. So you just have to click through that and it gives you the option of either getting a domain via Squarespace or using a domain that you own. So if you go into the domain section, you can go into using a domain that I own. And then in there, you can actually go in and click your domain and then get your other site. So if you're on GoDaddy, for example, you go in there and get it to point towards your Squarespace site, but it does give you the instructions quite clearly, and their chat help is actually quite useful for that as well if you've not done that before.
Another person, thanks to both For a great session, Karishma, is there a specific way of getting an email from your domain name, and does it cost more? What would be a rough figure you'd say is reasonable to spend on domain name and web hosting?
So in terms of emails, what I find is really good is Zoho. So actually with Design Week, especially because we have lots of different emails. So for example, Karishma at belfastdesignweek.com, admin, etc. We find Zoho is very good as a central sort of control. And it lets you have lots of different separate users on that as well. What you'll find is that with some sites, it lets you have aliases, and all that means is that you have a different sort of starting point. So again, it could be Karishma, admin, etc., but it all comes into one inbox. So you can choose to have either aliases, which is the same inbox, but just with different starting names. So info at, Karishma at, or with something like Zoho, you can have lots of separate names actually and separate user profiles as well. So if you have multiple people in your organization, that can be quite useful. And then just to see the second question as well, what would be a rough figure? I would say that, if you're starting out and you're using something like Squarespace, I would say it costs roughly between £100 and £200 a year. And it is cheaper to book it annually rather than monthly, but you can see what suits you as well. But what I would say is actually to gather all the content in place and then get your website started, just so you're not paying for those extra months while you're doing that. So have everything in place, then get the site and get going as well.
Perfect. Another question. If you shift your website, example from WordPress to Shopify, do you lose your Google position SEO?
I don't know, actually. I don't think so. If you're using the same domain as a host, I would imagine you might drop for a little while, but once you start using that website regularly, it should bump you back up again. What do you think, Karishma?
That's a good point. I haven't actually had to do that on a site. So I would say that, yeah, I think like you said, as long as you're constantly updating content and it's just as content rich as your previous site, I think that would work well. But what I would say is maybe some of the hosting sites like Shopify might have actually more provenance than some of the other ones that are less well known. So you might find that also boosts your hosting a bit more and brings you up in the SEO as well. So something like Coroflot that's not as well known, it might not be as good with SEO.
Perfect. I recently set up a Squarespace site and have added e-commerce, but was looking to move to Shopify as I can see there are limitations with Squarespace. How easily can it be to switch the domain to Shopify if the domain cost was included in the Squarespace monthly subscription?
I don't know about the Squarespace monthly subscription, but it's really just the same process once you're in the back end of Shopify. So there's the same sort of step that you connect your domain. There's a setting just at the bottom to do that the same way as you would in Squarespace, but I'm not sure if it's all tied into the Squarespace subscription, how that would work. Do you know, Karishma?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because if you've bought it with the hosting, it's usually connected to the hosting as well. It'd certainly be something to look into because I haven't had to do that before. So it's something that, yeah, it'd be worth maybe asking one of the chats for. But I don't see an issue because it is usually a separate cost to your hosting. So it should usually just let you have that. But because Squarespace primarily is a web hosting rather than a domain site, whereas you find with GoDaddy, it does multiple things. Squarespace bases its main sort of unique selling point as being this host. It might not let you do that as easily, but it should be possible. I know that's not very helpful, but it's probably worth going on and just asking one of their specialist customer advisors actually on it.
Perfect. I have one question for Emma. How do you plan your content for your website, but also for your social media?
Honestly, I have no real structure for this. So for the website, it's maybe a little bit more structured because there's those different sections, especially on the homepage. But I really just focus on seasonality. So at the moment we're focused on Mother's Day. So that makes it quite easy to work out what content should be on the front page or what should be the main focus. As well as that, just what are the main sellers? So if we're not on an occasion, maybe over the summer, stationery is always going to be big. Notebooks are always going to be big. We do 4 for 3 on cards. So that's kind of a big area. So just focusing on where customers are naturally drawn to. And then for Instagram, I have no content ideas. I just post when I feel like it.
I think that's all the questions I've answered there. This has been really, really informative.
There's one more, sorry. Esther, I think one more came in about sourcing imagery if you're a service-based business.
And if that's
any tips, Karishma and Emma?
Do you want to go first, Emma?
I don't really know, actually. Squarespace, I think, connects to an image site that you can drag those images in. So it has its own thing that connects to. I'm not sure what it's called, but you can just click on there and it has a lot of free images, and then you can pay for some. So that would be a good way.
I was going to suggest Unsplash as well. So Unsplash has a lot of really good free high-res imagery. So it has things like, if you want to show somebody doing something on a mood board, or somebody that is going gardening, or, they have lots of different sort of service-based visuals that are for free as well. And then you just have to basically just acknowledge the content creator as well. But you actually don't have to, but I think it's a nice thing to do because they've created the photograph. So that's quite good. And then I'd say also, if possible, it's great to just source your own content as well, because I know it's difficult and can be expensive if you're hiring a professional photographer, but it's something definitely to try and book into your plan, because I think it does make a difference. And I think Margaret said there's a small fee to transfer domain names. So yeah, absolutely. So if you're transferring from Squarespace to then a different domain host as well, you can do that, and that will be a small fee as well.
Just to say on the imagery, our next workshop is about photographing your work, or it could be just taking photographs like good headshots. So obviously it's not going to be quite as good as a professional photographer, but to get you started, if you don't have the budget to pay a photographer, you come along to that, you should get some tips on how to take shots of your work. Because I think, stock images will do the job to a certain extent, but I think even in terms of SEO, if you put your own content up there, imagery is much better. So do come along to that, and hopefully that will help.
And then Alana said there, can you recommend any local professional photographers? Yes, I think we can recommend tons of them, actually. So maybe we'll give Esther and Christine a few suggestions afterwards, maybe, and include that in the blog post about this.
Well, this has been really good, a really lovely way to start the weekend, and hopefully that has been helpful for you guys to start just kind of putting your website together. And I think one of the main things that I took away from that was, making sure that all your content is prepared, and making sure before you start creating purchasing the domains, because I know that I've purchased domains before, but I haven't had any content ready. So it's that sense of organizing that's very important. And yes, so thank you everyone for coming this morning. And if you guys wouldn't mind again filling in the feedback form that we'll be sending out hopefully on Monday, just to get a sense of how this went and also for the future ones. So yeah, thank you very much. I hope you guys have a great day, and that's the end of our session.
Very much. Thank you, Esther.